Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Janaea Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you so much for being with us today. And today we are going to be discussing something that has always been a trend for these Washington Capitals, all the way back to when they drafted Alex Ovechkin. But it has really hit superhero levels this season. And that's the ability of the Washington Capitals to stage comebacks and win in games in which they've fallen behind. Sometimes in games in which they've fallen behind by a lot. Now, first and foremost, let's take a look at some of the numbers the Caps have put up when trailing in games, shall we? This is going to be fun. Overall, of the Caps' league-leading 33 wins this season, nearly half of those wins, 16 to be exact, have come in games where the Caps trailed by at least a goal. That obviously leads the NHL overall comeback wins, that is, and it's a simply remarkable stat all on its own. But when you dive even deeper into the numbers here, it only gets even more incredible from there. They already have 13 wins this season when the opposition scores the first goal of the game. They are the only team in the NHL this season to have a winning record overall, a winning record at home, and a winning record on the road when the opposition scores first. Of course, it's still always better to be the team that scores first, and the Caps have been doing that more often than not, and their record when they score the first goal of the game is just ridiculous at 21-3. But when you play 82 games in a season and hopefully a bunch more in the playoffs, you can't score first every single game, right? So, shit happens, man. So it's extremely comforting to know that the Caps still win more games than they lose, even when giving up the game's first goal. And they are the only team in the NHL this season who can say that. So they're also leading the NHL in wins this season, both when trailing after one period and when trailing after two periods. And I know what you're thinking, you cynics, you. They're leading the NHL in wins when trailing after this period or that period. Well, that must mean that they find themselves down in games a lot, right? Well, actually, no. If that's what you're assuming right now, then you would be wrong, and you'd be making an ass out of you and of me, because the Caps, relative to the rest of the league, they actually don't find themselves down in games a lot. In fact, they are in the top 5 in the NHL for average time spent leading games this season, so certainly they're ahead on the scoreboard a lot more than they're behind. It's just that, they're extremely efficient at climbing back out of it and getting wins on the rare occasions where they do find themselves down on the scoreboard, which is really what set them apart from the rest of the league in this category. It's their efficiency. Their winning percentage in games where they've trailed is off the charts, really. And if that's not enough for you, they're also leading the entire NHL in multi-goal comebacks, with 7 of them that have resulted in victories already. And they are also leading the entire NHL in comebacks in the last minute of regulation and in both goals scored and comebacks with their goalie pulled for the extra attacker. They've already scored 7 times this season with the goalie pulled for the extra attacker, which, like I said, leads the entire NHL. They're leading the entire NHL both in scoring goals when they have their goalie pulled for the extra attacker, and in actually, staging comebacks with the goalie pulled for the extra attacker that eventually result in wins, whether it be, in regulation, in overtime, or in a shootout. So you see what I'm saying here, right? The Caps are very comfortable playing in any situation, and that definitely includes playing from behind. This definitely bodes well for the playoffs where, like I said, anything can happen at any given time. Some nights you might find yourselves down 3-0 at the end of the first period. You don't want that to mean that the game is over, and for the Caps, it has not meant that at all. It's definitely becoming an identity of this team, and they've talked about it as well, the players and the coaching staff. Their never say die attitude, how they're never out of a game no matter the score or the time left on the clock, because they simply never quit. They never stop giving it everything that they have, and of course it also helps when you have the offensive talent as well to be able to come back, and the Caps certainly have that in abundance. Many coaches around the league have already been quoted saying that the Capitals have the perfect recipe, the perfect cocktail of ingredients to fuel all of these comebacks. Because not only do they have the sublime talent that's necessary to stage these comebacks, you have to have talent to be able to score goals, right? To be able to come back. But B, they also have the right attitude. They have the confidence, they have the swagger that makes these comebacks not only possible, but actually commonplace for this team. You need both in order to be able to do what the Caps are doing. It's a combination of the two, the talent and the right attitude. You can't have just the talent without the attitude, and you can't have just the attitude without the talent. So the Caps, lucky for us, have both. And it's been very fun to watch this season. So what are the Capitals' top comebacks of the season so far? Everyone, of course, is going to have different opinions and likely a lot of crossover as well, because there's a few that are really obvious choices because of how epic they were. But I'm going to give you my top 5. So first up, at number 5, I've got the Caps-Leafs game at Capital One Arena early on in the season. It was on October 16th. Perhaps this early season game should have been a bit of foreshadowing as far as the Caps' comeback abilities, as the Leafs jumped out to a quick 2-0 lead, but the Caps roared back with 4 straight goals, including 3 goals in a span of 1 minute and 18 seconds that left Leafs players, coaches, and fans all scratching their heads and searching for answers. The Caps would win the game, obviously, and this one was a joy for me personally because I really just don't like the Toronto Maple Leafs. Canada's team, my ass, nobody likes you. At number 4, I've got a game between the Caps and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Specifically the one that took place on November 29th. In this one, the Lightning were looking to get a little revenge on the Capitals team that ended their postseason early in 2018, en route, of course, to the Caps winning the Stanley Cup. You remember the Lightning were pretty heavily favored in that series, at least in their own minds. But the Caps continued their dominance of the Lightning as Tampa held 2-goal leads on multiple occasions during this game. But they could not hold off the Caps once the Caps started playing physically. That was really the big difference in the game. And an aggressive forecheck saw Washington tie the game on goals by Jakub Vrana and Alex Ovechkin in the third period, erasing the 2-goal deficit and eventually winning the game in overtime on a sweet shot by Dmitry Orlov. Lightning defenseman Victor Hedman, he broke his stick over the crossbar in frustration after the goal as well. And the Lightning's fortunes against the Caps really have not improved at all since then, as Washington has beaten Tampa 2 more times since then, winning the season series by a tally of 3-0. So hopefully see you in the playoffs, Tampa. That would be great for us. At number 3, I have the Caps' most recent game, their last before the bye week, which we are currently suffering through, against the New York Islanders at Nassau Coliseum. We all remember how this one went, right? Already leading 3-1, Islanders defenseman Devin Tays, that's no relation to Jonathan Tays, who is a much better hockey player, but Devin scored his 9th career goal to make it a 3-goal lead, and for some reason he thought it would be a good idea to mock the Capitals at this point. With 20 whole minutes still left to play. So how many times do we have to see this same story play out? A word of advice to opposition teams: do not mock the Washington Capitals if you would like to win the hockey game. Poke the bear, bear get mad. When bear mad, bear bite you hard. Devin Tays scores, and he mocks Evgeny Kuznetsov's famous flying bird celebration. The Caps go to the locker room for the second intermission, down 4-1, where I have to imagine that this little mockery of Kuzi and the Caps was mentioned in the room. Alex Ovechkin said after the game, and I quote, "We got pissed." Yes, they did. So the Caps came out in the third period, and they scored right away with an aggressive forecheck leading to Carl Hagelin scoring his 2nd goal in as many games. Side note, get ready for the always stout defensively Carl Hagelin to crank up his offense here in the second half of the season, because he always does. He's not much for first halves. He's a second half and playoffs type of scorer. So I personally cannot wait for this. It's not as if the Caps need to add any more offense, but hey, It won't hurt. And then Alex Ovechkin scored his second goal of the game just a couple of minutes later on a beautiful move around Isles defenseman Scott Mayfield to make it 4-3. Tom Wilson tied the game at 4-4, and just when most teams would be, patting themselves on the back and getting satisfied with themselves and with their own comeback efforts, having already tied up the game, Jakub Vrana forces a turnover and snipes top shelf to give the Capitals a 5-4 lead late in the game. Ovechkin would finish off his second straight hat trick to make it 6-4, and that would be all she wrote. Fat Lady was singing in this one, so that was an insane comeback. And first of all, tying up the game and getting it to overtime for at least the single point would have been good enough for most teams after having been down by 3 goals heading into the final 20 minutes, right? Well, evidently not so for this team. They have a serious killer instinct, and they wanted to finish off their division rival in regulation to ensure that the Islanders would not get even a single point. Cutthroat, man, and I love it. And the Isles deserved it too, by the way, having already began counting their chickens at 4-1 and with 20 minutes still left to play against the best team in the National Hockey League. Barry Trotz said after the game that he warned his team during the second intermission that this Capitals team has championship pedigree and that they are not going to be done yet. They're not going to go away. They're not going to give up. They're going to come hard, and they're going to be aggressive, and they're going to push back. And so we had better be ready for it, because they've come back against a lot of very good teams already this season, and they've won games where it looked like they should have been out of it already. So Barry Trotz, he knows what's up. He warned them, but evidently his team did not listen. So the Caps take the 2 points in regulation. And then at number 2, I've got another very recent game, this time from January 5th, when the Capitals beat the San Jose Sharks 5-4 in overtime. Now, for anyone who didn't see this game, for whatever reason, first of all, I am very, very sorry for your loss. Unless, of course, you were one of those losers who shut the TV off at 4-2 for the Sharks with less than a minute to go, in which case, fuck you, you suck, and you and your lack of faith really don't deserve the absolute Mona Lisa-esque painting of a finish to this game by your Washington Capitals. You are not worthy, okay? Okay. Anyways, here's what happened. The Sharks held leads of 3-1 and 4-2 in the game. They scored an empty net goal to go up 4-2 with exactly 1 minute left in regulation time. So everyone, including the Capitals broadcasters, by the way, thought that the game was over. Haha, should have known better. The Caps, unfazed, they would pull Braden Holtby for the empty net and the extra attacker again before the faceoff immediately following the Sharks' goal. So they win the faceoff and quickly get the puck into the Sharks zone, where budding superstar Jakub Vrana would pull off a spinning wrist shot for the goal to pull the Caps within 4-3 with 46.9 seconds still remaining on the clock. Vrana's goal came just a mere 13 seconds after the Sharks had scored into the empty net to seemingly seal the game at 4-2. Which is perhaps poetic, by the way, since 13 also happens to be Vrana's jersey number. And you could really see on Vrana's face that, you knew it was on at that point. So fans scrambling to get back to their seats before the next face-off. And by the way, guys, haven't we learned our lesson yet here, Caps fans? You never leave a game that this Capitals team is playing in until the final buzzer sounds, or you just might miss something spectacular. So that was the case again here, and I do hope that if anyone missed the ending here, if you left your seat early, learn your lesson. Just don't do it. Don't leave the game before it's over. So Nicholas Backstrom and Evgeny Kuznetsov, because who else? They would work the puck along the boards until Kuznetsov could send a no-look backhand pass to TJ Oshie open in front. And of course, the Osh babe would fire it home into the top corner. How many times have we seen that before from him? It's practically automatic when he gets the puck in that position in front of the net. So anyways, with just 14 seconds left on the clock, we have got ourselves a tie game. And if you listen closely, really, really closely, you could actually hear Martin Jones sobbing in the background when that goal was scored. And there was simply no way that the Caps weren't going to win the game in overtime, was there? After this comeback, they were going to win, right? So Lars Eller, he would take a feed from future Norris Trophy winner John Carlson in the extra frame and bury it past Jones for the comeback win. So it was really just simply epic. And also epic, by the way, is this stat. So the Caps, with the win, they became only the 7th team in NHL history. Again, that's in over 100 years of NHL history. And the first team in 15 years to come back to win after trailing by multiple goals in the final minute of regulation. So I guess you could say it's pretty rare. Pretty much never happens. Again, they're only the 7th team in NHL history to be able to do that. So like I said, just epic. And finally, number 1 on my list was the absolutely epic 4-goal comeback win in my stomping grounds, Vancouver, British Columbia, against the Canucks on October 25th. Now, this one was especially special for me, given that I was in the building to witness it. But even if I weren't, I would still be naming it number 1. Because it was really just that good. Not only did the Caps trail by 4 goals in the game, but they trailed by 4 goals pretty damn late in the game, as it looked as if we were going to head to the third period that way, before, of course, Evgeny Kuznetsov sniped a goal with under a second left in the second period to make it a 5-2 score. And that Kuznetsov goal would prove to be huge as we head to the third period. And pretty much right away, the Canucks are gifted yet another power play. They had a lot of them in the game. So that's lights out for the Caps, right? Wrong. Lars Eller would score shorthanded to cut it to 5-3. Michael Kempny would score on a blast from the point exactly 3 minutes later to make it 5-4. And then 2 minutes after that, Kempny would score again on almost the exact same shot, tying up the game at 5-5. So Rogers Arena, they were booing a lot at this point. Of course, I was standing up and cheering. There was a guy behind me, very obnoxious, who had been chirping at my girlfriend and I when it was 5-1 for the Canucks, which I'm sure, seemed like a lifetime ago to that guy, as we were here in this third period. And so when I turned around to shoot him a look this time, he had his face buried in his hands. Yeah, bro. Sucks to suck, doesn't it? So the Caps would eventually finish off the Canucks in the shootout with St. Nicholas Backstrom scoring the winner right in front of us, right in front of our seats there. So 6-5 final in favor of your Washington Capitals. And again, Rogers Arena rained down the boos. On the drive home, Canucks radio pondered what the fuck is wrong with their team. We laughed, cackled really all the way home in the car. So what a night that was. And that is my number 1, folks. Feel free to share your top Capitals comebacks of this season in the comments section, as I'm sure everyone has different games that stood out to them or that were their favorites, and I would love to hear them. And now just a quick question here, and I'm being serious here, really, I am. So Alex Ovechkin, right? He just finished up a monster week, which saw him score a whopping 8 goals in just 3 games. That's including 3 straight multi-goal games and back-to-back hat tricks. So he's obviously been named the NHL's first star of the week because of it. But more importantly, Boston's David Pastrnak, prior to this week, he had a 10-goal lead on Ovi for the Rocket Richard Trophy as the league's leading goal scorer. In just a few short days, Alex Ovechkin said, fuck that, and that 10-goal lead has absolutely evaporated, as Ovechkin has cut it down to just 2. So 2 goals, which, as Ovi has just reminded us yet again here this week, that's just another day at the office for him. So does anyone here actually think that Alex Ovechkin is not going to surpass Pastrnak and win the Rocket Richard again this season? Anyone? Bueller. So let's look at the facts. The facts are that every single season, the Rocket Richard race, if you can call it that, follows this exact same script. Every single season, it's some, young, exuberant 20-something who comes flying out of the gate, having a career year, getting all excited, staying really hot, right up until approximately Christmas time. scoring a bunch of goals in October through December when no one in the entire NHL is playing defense yet. And then every single season, that same 20-something flavor of the month, whoever he is that season, it is a different guy every year, by the way. He slows down after approximately New Year's Day when defenses start tightening up and it starts getting harder to score goals. And then every single season, there is Alex Ovechkin kicking it into another fucking level after New Year's. So he's 34 years old now. He probably doesn't care about yet another Rocket Richard trophy at this point. He's got 8 of them already. He already holds the NHL record for the most times leading the league in goals. So he likely doesn't give a shit at this point. All he cares about now, in terms of, individually and goal scoring wise, is catching Wayne Gretzky. So it's not about the individual accomplishment, and yet every single season he finds this whole other level after New Year's. And he just rockets, no pun intended, ahead of everyone in the goal scoring race. It's really quite amazing, especially now being in his mid-30s. The fact that his legs get stronger as the season goes along, as all of these 20-somethings fade away. It's pretty incredible. And if you missed it, all he did in this last week of play here, goal scoring wise, was tie Teemu Selanne on the all-time goals list. And then he passed Selanne, and then he tied Mario Lemieux, and then he passed Mario Lemieux, and then he tied Steve Yzerman. So he actually went from 12th all-time to 9th all-time, all in under a week. He tied and passed Lemieux and then tied Yzerman all in the same game with his hat trick against the Islanders. So that is just silly, obviously. And I mean, think about that for a second. Really, I want you guys to really, stop and think about it. Look at some of these names that he's climbing over right now. I mean, he just knocked Mario fucking Lemieux, Super Mario, as he was always called, out of the top 10 all time. Mario Lemieux, knocked out of the top 10 in the history books by our very own Alexander Ovechkin. What a fucking legend. He is going to win the Rocket Richard again this season, and he is going to surpass Wayne Gretzky as the all-time leading goal scorer in NHL history. I'm saying it now. I've actually been saying it since 2008. Seriously, you can look that up. I called this all the way back in 2008. Anyways, sometime soon I'm going to do a whole episode on Ovechkin's goal-scoring legend, really. Everything he's been able to do so far and everything that he will do in the future. But for now, Caps fans, just sit back and enjoy the show that is the Grade 8. You are never going to see another one like it. No one will. And that's all I've got for you today. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. You can do so on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, on Google Podcasts, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, basically anywhere and everywhere that you get your podcast from, we are there. And don't forget to leave us a review as well if you feel so inclined. I do love reading them. I read every single one of them, and it always reminds me why I'm putting the time and the effort in to do the show. So thank you all so much, and until next time, Caps fans, stay classy, and I will catch you on the flip side of the bye week. Let's go, Caps!